Okay, welcome again, everybody, to another episode of the Adult Autism, a Spectrum of Uniqueness podcast. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Micah Bargi. And Micah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on here. It's a real honor.
Well, I think it's a real fascinating thing to talk that we're going to be diving into today. It's what is it like for an autistic person to go to college? And college can look different to different people depending on what they do. Some people go to community college, they might commute from home. Other people, they go away, far away to college, to a university, and they don't see family or friends much anymore. Other people go to technical schools. And so I wanted to start off with you is if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then I'm going to ask you about your college experiences. Can you just tell us what you do for a living, where you live, and then we'll get into our discussion.
I live in Arcanum, Ohio. I currently work two part-time jobs, the Darke County Courthouse in Greenville, Ohio, which is about 20 minutes away from here.
Okay.
I work in the Clerk of Courts Division as an assistant deputy clerk, where my duties primarily consist of filing documents digitally and physically. And then my other job is with a Taco Bell restaurant, same location, Greenville, Ohio.
Okay.
I'm there on Saturdays and Sundays where I work as a crew member, primarily cleaning and sanitizing the store.
Nice. Okay. So you kind of you doing a couple of different things there. So that sounds like that's keeping you busy. So
Yeah, just trying to do the best I can to support myself.
of course, that's what it's all about. Well, let's start off. Tell us where you went to college and what kind of a program did you complete?
I attended Edison Community College, which is in Piqua, Ohio, which is about maybe half hour away from here. They also have a campus in Greenville, which I mentioned earlier, where my two jobs are located.
Yes.
And then I attended Sinclair Community College, which is in Dayton, Ohio. It's about 40 minutes away from here. Um, I got my degrees here. This is Sinclair
Awesome. All right.
multimedia certification.
So for those of you who are listening to this podcast, Micah is holding up one of his degrees for us to see on the YouTube version of the podcast. Okay, so this is from Sinclair Community College. Okay.
Yep. And then here's my Edison degree.
All right. I bet you're really proud of those things.
Very proud.
Yeah. Well,
As a
let's
matter
look.
of fact,
Go ahead.
oh, um, yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, but my mom actually told me that one of my biggest accomplishments was attending college.
Is that right? Wow. So that was a big deal for you. Well, I know that, for some people, when they first start college, it can be an adjustment for them. What was that adjustment like for you as an autistic adult going to college? What types of things did you either struggle with or have to adjust to, kind of going off doing that college thing?
For me, it wasn't really too much of an adjustment, but
Okay,
again, that's just me. Everybody adjusts differently to different
that's right.
things. But I will admit, college is much different than high school. It's more of an independent lifestyle. Um, I know for one, you're going to school because you want to, not because you have to.
Yeah.
Classes are longer. You're usually ranging maybe all my classes are usually ranged between to like an hour to close to 3 hours. But there are classes that last longer than that, and there's some classes that are twice a week, one day a week. Usually depends on the credit hours that they're worth. Um, one thing that one thing I had to deal with was some pretty negative people,
Oh,
professors, especially professors and advisors, because whenever I was struggling in a class or two, I would address it to them, my concerns about, my fear of
yeah,
failing the class or whatever, and
sure.
they would suggest that I drop the class or change majors. Offensive as that was, I completely disregarded that and kept going for my goal which was to make video games and cartoons.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Okay. So, so you had these experiences where you weren't really getting the support that you wanted or needed from them, but you just decided, okay, I'm just kind of gonna go straight forward anyway. You just kind of did it anyway.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Were there any surprises that you didn't expect? Kind of going off to college, something that kind of took you by surprise. It's like, oh, I didn't know I was going to have to deal with this.
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just go through what kinds of challenges did you run into on the social side of college? Like, you know, I know that when I went to college, I had to do group projects and class discussions. You're sitting in a classroom with students, a lot of whom you might not know. Um, what was the social part of college like for you, Micah?
I never really paid too much attention to that, but if anything, I felt like I was burdening people whenever I was asking them for help or they were trying to help me and I just didn't understand what they were talking about. I felt like it was getting on their nerves how, they have had to repeat themselves a number of times. Um, and in some cases like that, it does take longer for me to fathom things. We all learn things at a different pace.
Exactly. Yeah. What was your clue that you may have been annoying them or I don't know, irritating them? How did you know that or how did you pick up on that?
Um, I know in the past, there have been people who have gotten frustrated with me because of how long it took for me to grasp what it is they were helping me with. And
Okay.
I mean, everybody's different, but experiences like
Yeah.
that can be haunting in the long run, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, there were certain things that it took you kind of longer to process things or to understand things. You would want things maybe clarified or explained to you. It sounds like that's what happened with your professors too. Like you wanted the explanations and whatever, and they got kind of either fed up or frustrated with you. And so this would happen a little bit with your classmates as well, it sounds like.
I feel like in some degrees, yes. In
Okay.
cases like that, these people are either giving out too much information or they're speaking in big words that I've never heard of
Yes.
or I've heard of them, but don't know exactly what they mean. In a case like this, people sound like Charlie Brown's teacher to me. Wah, 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 wah. That's pretty much all I hear.
Yes, I remember that from my childhood. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Did you live in a dorm? Did you commute to school? I mean, how did that work for you?
I commuted. I lived with my mom and stepdad at the time.
Okay. Did that work out okay doing college that way?
Yeah, I thought it was. I think it's more
Yeah,
affordable as opposed to living in a
you're
dorm
right.
and all that.
It's much more affordable. Yes. Okay. Well, I don't know if at your school, I know some colleges have what's called a disabled student services office where people who have been evaluated, who have confirmed, you know, diagnoses of learning disabilities, attention deficit disorder, autism, whatever, that they can get accommodations for their assignments or for different things that they go through in their educational experiences. Did you register with the Disabled Student Services Office at your college? If you did, what was your experience like?
I did register to the disability services with both colleges. Just my accommodations mainly consisted of just taking quizzes, tests, exams in a usually in a more isolated area like another classroom where it's less crowded, more quiet, and I would also have somebody read the questions to me.
Was that helpful to have those accommodations?
I felt like it was to some degree.
Yeah, because I know that for some people, they feel like if they don't have the accommodations, that they're not able to, um, they need the extra time to be able to think things through and to really show what they know, to be able to do well on an exam. I'm not sure if that was what you found to be true or not.
Well, I always like I would always get intimidated whenever like whenever I didn't know questions because we all know that in school you have to have a certain grade in order to pass a class. Like
Yeah,
I know in most cases D minus or higher. Well,
yep,
in college there are some classes where you have to have a C or higher in order to pass, or if you're taking it as a prerequisite for another. One example of which was trigonometry, which is a class I had to take to earn my associate's degree. That was actually a prerequisite to physics, which was another required class on my part. Back in the day, that was. So whenever, um, so whenever exams and tests and solve, like when if your grade dependent on all that, like a majority
yeah.
of your grade or whatever, um, usually kind of intimidated me. I don't know if any of that came out right, but I'm sure you get my point.
I do get your point. Okay. Well, how did you, I know that some people I've talked to will, especially when it gets to a certain part of the semester, when things are starting to pile up, they have a lot of things due, and then their final exams that come along, and it can be pretty overwhelming. I wonder if if you had that experience as a college student, if there were times when you just kind of experienced sensory overload, maybe even burnout from everything that you had to do. Um, some people, it's not so much with dealing with the assignments as much as it is just kind of dealing with stuff like noises, distractions, deadlines, anything like that that you had to deal with, and how did you deal with that kind of stuff?
Sensory and noise was never really too much of a problem for me. It was mostly just grades and tight deadlines for some assignments, especially if they were worth big points and a majority of it relied on your overall grade.
Now, let me ask you about this, Micah. Do you have a good sense of time? Like as an example, some people will say, "Oh, I lose track of time so easily," or they put stuff off until the last minute. They kind of procrastinate, and um, or they don't have a sense of urgency as to, I really need to get this done. Are any of those things that you struggled with in college?
Yes, I do admit that I procrastinated and I never really had too much of a sense of an urgency. I don't know if that's different from procrastinating, but
Yeah.
sometimes my mind just likes to wander, you know?
Did you find that that ever created any problems or challenges for you in terms of, yeah, I think for some college students, deadlines can kind of sneak up on them. I mean, they kind of they know that it's in the syllabus that, oh, okay, I can read my syllabus and see that on this date I have to have this done. But sometimes, after you read the syllabus for the first time, it kind of fades into the background and you don't remember things very well. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, my professor just said today that our assignment is due at the end of the week. Did that kind of stuff happen to you?
Not that I recall. I was aware of deadlines, but like I mentioned before, sometimes my mind just likes to wander and I'm left saying, I don't feel like doing this. I'll take care of it later.
Yeah. But you did procrastinate. Now, for some people, procrastinating they kind of find that to be something that works for them because it kind of creates pressure. And the pressure is what motivates them to get the thing done. Um, but for other people, it doesn't quite work that way. But how did procrastination work for you? I'm just kind of curious about that.
It was never really pressure for me, but how I look at it, it basically just was basically just free time for me to just let my mind relax. It's kind of like with school and work,
Yeah,
at certain times you get breaks, like 10 minutes or so, just to, yeah, just to kind of, give yourself a rest, stuff like that, because usually if I'm stuck on a task and I'm working on it for a long period of time, I kind of face burnout, like probably in my head. And,
yeah.
and it works for me with making video games. Like I'm working on for a period of time and then suddenly, and then at some point I feel like a burnout coming on. It's like, I better step away from this for a while, give myself a
I,
rest.
yeah,
And then once I'm all rested up and then it's back to work.
I gotcha. Okay, all right. Well, looking back, were there any maybe there were some classes or I remember looking back at my college experience, there were certain professors who I look at and boy, they really made a positive difference in my life and my success in my career. Can you kind of look back at your experience and say, there were some certain classes or professors or resources that really seemed to make a positive difference in my life? Were those, can you think back and anybody that was like that or anything like that?
If there's one person, it would have to be my trigonometry professor. There was one day where I told him about my concern about the possibility of failing the class, and his response was, "Don't worry about your grade, just worry about learning the material."
Wow. Okay. That probably took a lot of the pressure off. And
Um,
go
oh,
ahead.
yeah, sorry. I don't think it did back in the day, but looking back on that, I mean, sorry, my mind's starting to mush here. Um, but I mean, I have to say, I do think those were some pretty good words of encouragement.
Well, let me ask it this way. Why do you think that him saying that, don't worry about your grade, just try to learn the material. Why do you think that that made an impact on you?
If I had to guess, it would probably be because of some of the other professors who have just told me to just quit. Because I mean, that's
Yeah,
their job is to help their students succeed, not drag them down.
that's right. And it sounds like unlike the other professors who were not as understanding or not as helpful, this person seemed to be more invested in you and wanted to make sure that you were going to succeed. And it sounds like that was a difference between this person and the other people. And let me ask this because you said this was a trigonometry professor, right?
Correct.
But that wasn't your major. Math wasn't your major.
No, but I do use a lot of math with making video games.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because you kind of made me think back to when I was in high school. When I think back, who were my best teachers back then? It was my geometry teacher. So it was a math teacher, and I hated math. I could not stand math. But this teacher was the best teacher I ever had. And she kind of did what you were kind of talking about, that she seemed to really make the investment and to show the interest and really wanted to make sure that I had a real good grasp of the material. And she did whatever she could to help me learn that stuff. And not all teachers are like that. So I'm glad to hear that you had that kind of experience with at least one of your professors. Well, for autistic adults who are either thinking about going to college or maybe they're already enrolled, what's one piece of advice that you could give them to um, help make their college experience a positive one, maybe more manageable? What words of advice do you have for them, Micah?
Never give up, no matter what obstacles come your way. Yes, you are going to have bad things happen, but keep in mind that's part of life. You just have to disregard all the negativity and whatever bad influences come your way. You just got to walk away. You got to keep your eyes on the prize.
That's really good advice right there. And one thing I want to do to kind of wind this up, and I didn't even ask you this at the beginning, but we'll go ahead and ask you this now. What other resources or things that you're doing in the autism world might be of benefit for people who are listening to this podcast right now? Do you have a blog? Do you do any podcasting yourself? Anything that you want to talk about that you're doing that people who are in the autism community might be interested in knowing about you?
I do have a YouTube channel, Micah Barga, as you see on the screen there.
Okay.
So, and so if you search my name, it should be one of the very first search results to come up, and you should see my profile picture as well.
Okay.
I do have a vlog where I do talk about my experiences, and I also have a blog, not to be confused with vlog, on Google Blogger, and that's just titled My Autism.
Okay. And I think what I'll do is I will include links to at least one of those, the YouTube channel, because I think that would be easy to find. I will include a link to that in the show notes. So if people who are listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube can find you and can listen to your stuff too, because I think I'm assuming there would be a lot of really good stuff on there. Well, listen, thanks for joining me today, Micah, and kind of sharing your experiences about what it was like to go to college. And sounds like there were some really good things that happened and some things not so good. But I'm really glad to hear that despite the fact that there were some of those negative things that happened, you still decided, I know what the prize is. I'm keeping my eyes on that, and that's what I'm going for. And you did it, and you got a couple of degrees. So that's really awesome to see. And once again, thanks for joining me for today's podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on here.
Okay, well, you have a good rest of the day.
You too.